Welcome, everybody. My name is Aaron Kennedy with Cognition360. Excited to talk to you today about project management and how you can get some more revenue out of your customers in a healthy way. So I've been with Cognition for 2+ years now, and have been happy to be on this journey to provide these insights for MSPs out there. With me today, I've got Robert Powell from the Bandwidth team and Eamon Magan, also from Cognition360. Robert, if you could give you a little intro about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Glad to be here. Excited to be here. Again, my name is Robert Powell. I'm the Vice President of Business Development with the Bandwidth team. We are a connectivity, brokerage, and unified communications as a service consulting and brokerage firm based here in Atlanta, Georgia.
That's quite a mouthful.
Easy for me to say.
Yeah, we'll talk more about what that is in a second. Eamon, if you could tell a little about yourself.
Thanks, Aaron. Hi, I'm Eamon. I'm a senior consultant at Cognition. Been at Cognition for almost 6 years now. So I'm kind of in charge of all the reporting development, and sometime I talk to customers. So some of you may have spoken to me already.
Yep. So today what we want to talk about is like how to use projects within ConnectWise and how you can really identify certain customers that have low project revenue. And more specifically, like, again, what we love about Cognition and the data is making data that's actionable. So once you go find that information, like, what can you do about it? So that's why I asked Robert to come on. And so you can take action on those with the Bandwidth team. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's what you should be able to create and manage those projects in after they come from the Bandwidth team in ConnectWise. So we're not going to deep dive into the ConnectWise side of it. I'm not going to show the app and things like that. I'm sure many of you already know how that looks. And there's often kind of like pain points in how you manage that, and so we'll touch a little bit on that to get some better insights into using projects within ConnectWise. So today, what we're really trying to solve is you don't want to have customers that have inconsistent project revenue. So what I mean by that is a customer that is paying you, let's just say you have a customer paying you $10,000 a month and you're doing no projects for them. Well, usually what that means over time is you're not upgrading their equipment, you're not getting them on the right technologies, you're not getting on them on the right stack. And so your support with them is going to go up, so that you're going to be less and less profitable with them because you're working on older equipment, you're working on stuff that's maybe outside of your technical stack. So that's one thing that you want to be able to jump in quickly and recognize. Generally what you want to see is a consistent ratio. So if, and there's not a certain ratio that you're necessarily looking for. Everybody's technical stack and the way they approach customers is different, but usually what you want to do is have a certain consistency across the board with all your clients. So we enable you to see that in Cognition360. So we have a project module that's specifically dedicated for project reporting. I know project reporting within ConnectWise and trying to get that is a little barren, to be kind. I'm going to let Eamon jump in and share his screen, and he can talk real quick about the project module that we have within C360.
Yep, let me just share it out. So the report I'm going to show today is kind of the main project management report we have. It allows you to see at a portfolio level, how many projects you've got. I'll just get rid of this off the side of the screen here. So here, just for the demo today, we've got 19 projects in total. And you can select your statuses, whether you want to look at active projects, cancel projects, close projects here as well. It starts off with a dashboard style screen where you can see straight away, projects that are ending in the next period. Here we've got 4 weeks, a number of projects. You don't have a drill through necessarily on here, but what you do have is the interaction where you can pick a particular project manager, and then all the other visuals will change for that project manager's details, so that if you're a project manager or a program manager, you can look at all the information here, or if you just want a single project manager, you've got some filters over here. In terms of kind of the detail that we show, the weekly dashboard is kind of a concise view that was built kind of for those weekly project management meetings where you can quickly see the state of all projects. It gives some, obviously the standard information of the customer, the project name, and who the project manager is. But it also looks at the budget. If you do have a budget, it'll show you projects that don't have a budget. There's some quick filters over here where you can see the budget hours on track. So you can do no for that, and automatically give you all those projects that you have done more actual hours than you have budgeted hours. The budget here is a little bit smart that it looks at multiple areas within ConnectWise Manage. It looks at the tickets on the project, but it also looks at the project and if it has that estimated hours, and it takes the highest value. So sometimes if you're converting a project from an opportunity, your system might be set up to put in a default value of say 10 hours, but then when you fill out that work plan and you put in those budgets in the tickets, that 10 hours will still remain potentially on the project information, but the tickets will have the true budget here. And this is what we're showing here. And then you can actually equate it against what you've actually done, get your percentage that's over. If you wanted to quickly see those projects that don't have a budget and get that information in there, you can see that even though they don't have a budget.
1 second there. So we got a question in the chat. How do I see the detail on the actual hours on that weekly dashboard report?
Yeah, so we do have drill throughs on a lot of the reporting, and this will allow you to get into further information. For that, you would need to see the project phases data. And this allows you to see the phases that are on the project, but then also the tickets that are on the project, but also the tickets that relate to the phase. So again, selecting a phase on this table will tell you the tickets that are over here. You can drill through further and actually see those actual hours, the time entries for them, who did them, when they did them as well. So it's just another drill through in there under project labor. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you.
No problem. So yes, just some of the other information that's in here that we've surfaced over time with some of our customers requesting it is, being able to see the scheduled end date, if it's passed or not, so it changes color if it's passed. The last activity is also quite useful one, particularly for, say, like a project that's on hold. And this will show you the last time there was a time entry. And here you can see that it's in 2021, where these other projects that are in progress is more up to date, even though one of them is last year. Obviously, it's demo data, so it's set up to show those irregularities. But it quickly allows you to see, even though a project has a status of in progress, it says, well, when was it last worked on? It's like, well, it's not really in progress if it was worked on in November last year. So you've got that information here. There is a more detailed version on the project details where it brings in some of the financials from that project header. So your estimated revenue, your estimated billing amount, if it's fixed fee. It'll tell you your billing type, whether it's fixed fee, actual rates, override rates. So if it was an override rate, it would tell you that hourly rate that you've entered there. And then for the fixed fee, it's telling you what that billing amount is. Again, it can be a sense check to make sure that you've got those numbers in there on how you bill. And then just over here, it also splits out the hours by do not bill and no charge. Obviously, it becomes very important when you're doing those actual rates to make sure that you're not doing a lot of work for free that you can't charge the customer. There is quite a lot of other views in here that you can do by project manager. You can do by board if you've got multiple project boards. The project
Can you click
labor
on the Gantt chart? I'm getting a request for
Sure.
that in the chat already.
No problem. Yeah, project managers love Gantt charts. This will show you your active projects that you've selected, and then just showing you when they've started, when they're going to complete. So it's not going to show you out the work plan. We do have a specific work plan report that just spreads out, and you can select your project and show your phases and your tickets, and you can see that information. But this Gantt chart is just kind of showing you a more visual way of seeing when projects start and end.
Great.
There's just a few other ones that I'll show. The project metrics, again, is very useful for those kind of post-implementation reviews, but also the general project management catch-ups, where it's showing you, projects that have started in a period. So here I'm just doing year to date. So up here you can see they've got 7 projects have started. The green ones are still active. The gray ones have been completed. So you can see when they were there, and then also overall what you've completed in that period. So if you've got any metrics that you need to hit, or you want to just have a general review of saying how many projects did we close last year, you can change the dates up here to last year, and it will show you how many closed out. The project labor allows you to do some analysis to see, you know, which projects are generating what type of labor. And this is all actual hours. It's not those rounded hours as well. So you can see, you know, what hours were billable, what hours were do not bill. Selecting a line here will show the detail down here, so you can see actual time entries, ticket numbers on them. The labor trends as well can be quite useful if you have any KPIs that you need to do X number of project hours over a period. So here you can see that this is on weeks, and if you wanted to drill up and look at it by monthly, you can just use the arrow there and it goes up by month or back down again. So it's just showing you, you know, the number of hours you're doing each week, and then of those, what are billable, what's do not bill, what's no charge as well. So a lot of data in here. You know, some of it can be more useful than others, but it depends on how you manage your projects.
Mm-hmm.
What this doesn't show is profit and financials. We do have a specific project profitability report, but for today, the financial one I'm going to show you is this one. I know, Aaron, you had a few points you wanted to cover off on this report.
Yeah, we can jump there. And for those on the call that are not our existing customers, the way that this stuff works is you would sign up with us and you would have all of these reports that you see in the project, and we have different ones across. We got sales, procurement, finance, service, that you would get all of that stuff you basically get all that within about a week. So we would have all those reports ready. Just most of that time is just kind of processing your data and loading it, just depending on how much data you have. But that's at a very high level, kind of how we work. One of those specific things related to the topic today is talking about customer profitability, specifically when it comes to project revenue and having those things aligned. Kind of what I was talking about earlier. You want to have a general consistent ratio in your, I'm going to call them real clients. So I'm not talking about your, hey, we have a website with you and you pay $15 a month. I'm not talking about those kind of clients. We're talking about clients that are real fixed fee. We pay you this much per month. Now you're going to have one-offs where, hey, we just support their IT department and we're just rollover for their IT department and they do the projects. Of course, you're going to have stuff like that. But for the most part, you want to constantly just be feeding that project revenue, because the more projects you're doing, obviously you're making revenue off that. But even more specifically is you're lowering your support costs, because you're moving them over and aligning them to your technical stack, which is something that you really want to focus on. The more you have people consistent on a single technical stack, the better off your support desk is going to be, which means you can hire more people and all the great things that come with higher profitability. If you don't know what your technical stack is, I encourage you to really hone in on that. And if you want some additional help, a company like Sierra Pacific Group can help you kind of narrow that down and kind of talk you through that process. One of the things that I wanted to bring up is this report right here that specifically shows what I'm talking about. So one of these columns, I think it's the project to agreement one right there, will specifically show what is the ratio of the amount we have billed in agreement billing to the amount of project billing. So in this scenario, this United Shipping Solutions, the very first one you see, we billed them 382. And again, at the top, you're going to see over the last 12 months. So that's the key, is like, how often are we doing our refresh cycles? So how often should we get new servers? How often should we get new switches? That kind of stuff is going to vary, but you can flip that number around to what you think makes sense. So if digging in here, any of these that you see on here that are high agreement ones are where I would start. So these are going to be like, just take your bottom 5 ones. That's usually just a general good practice to start with. And then you can start digging in. Do we not know things about this client? Especially these ones at the top. These are your higher paying ones. So do you know who their VoIP provider is? Do you know who their internet provider is? Do you know how old their servers are? Things like that. All stuff that you really should be gathering in your onboarding project. And one thing that's really helpful for anybody working on this kind of stuff is knowing contract dates. So getting things like, well, when does your VoIP contract expire? When internet expire? How does that work? A lot of people don't know this information, and then they get hit up by some sales rep from AT&T, and then it's like, hey, we're moving over, and they tell you the day before, right? They tell you the day before, hey, we're moving to AT&T fiber, I need you to have a guy out here because AT&T is coming out tomorrow. Then you're scrambling to kind of make it happen. It's not even the right service that they needed. It's not, doesn't make any sense. They're moving in 3 months anyway, but now they're locked in a contract at their old place. So things like that were pretty common when I was working at MSP that customers would do. So we try to get ahead of that. So having that renewal date ahead of that is going to show that kind of thing. So you can stop sharing your screen for a second here. So one thing that I really did not want to do is deal with the kind of constant different, I'm dealing with this provider or that provider, and knowing which one was the right one to choose. And Robert, this is really where your team can come in handy, and just being able to kind of kick that over to you guys in a way that wasn't like, hey, these people are going to take my IT services or get a relationship with the customer behind my back, but that trusted relationship where, hey, these guys are going to know which providers I should be working with and what's a good technological fit with my customer. But then also just the general, like, hey, knowing what prices are legit right now. Because I would often find a customer that would have an AT&T T1 circuit as a failover, but they're paying $3,000 a month because that was the price they signed up for in 1997. Things like that. I'm sure you probably run into that before, Robert. So if you could talk a little bit about, so when a customer comes to you, specifically an MSP comes to you and says, hey, I want to help with this one customer, how does your process work and that kind of thing?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Well, I guess I'll start by explain a little bit more on who we are, and that'll answer how we help an MSP specifically. But as I mentioned earlier, we're a connectivity broker and a unified communications as a service consulting firm. Think hosted voice over IP when I use the acronym UCaaS or Unified Communications. Really, this is what we do all day, every day. And so we recognize that our partners, our MSP partners and their end clients don't analyze this or review what's out there. And the cost per megabyte, for example, is decreasing year over year. So to your point, they can have outdated stuff that hadn't been evaluated. They could certainly be overpaying for it. And by simply asking the question about contracts, about providers, about what's in place during that onboarding process, you're able to document it and then identify those, I would consider very low-hanging fruit opportunities from a project perspective. When you change an ISP or internet service provider, certainly you're going to have public IP addresses that are changing in the firewall.
Right.
Any VPNs that may be coming back into the network would have to be updated as well because that IP changes. And then from a hosted voice over IP perspective, even more time and material spent in setting up things like VLANs, ensuring quality of service and ensuring that the network in place today is going to enable that system to work as it's designed to do. Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. So really, when a customer kind of comes to you, again, just to kind of circle back, the first thing you have to be able to identify that, because the last thing you want to do is be on the tail end of that.
Yep.
So doing something like that through Cognition360 is really kind of what we wanted to talk about and be able to do that from a reporting perspective. I'm going to throw up a poll real quick where you guys can answer that. So again, Cognition360 has a 21-day trial. We'll keep going on this conversation while this is happening. If you want a 21-day trial, you can go ahead and sign up. You want to talk about it a little bit more. We've got some people that can talk to you. I guess I'm included in that. People you can talk to here. But yeah, so once they've kind of identified that and they're working with you, what are those things that you need to know from the customer? And do you deal directly with the customer? Do you deal with the MSP? What's kind of the best way?
Really, whatever's most comfortable, but we are typically engaging with that end client depending on the comfort level of the MSP. But our process is simple, is based on the end client's needs, wants, their organizational goals, their geographies. We go out to the marketplace, and we've got 250-ish service provider partners that predominantly play in the connectivity and the voice over IP space. There are many more than that. We tend to work with those providers that are best of breed, but it is dependent on geography. It is dependent on their requirements, which are all going to be unique to that end user. So we do want to have a needs analysis or some sort of discovery to make sure we understand where their business critical applications sit, how they connect to them today, what integrations may exist today between their existing VoIP solution or PBX, and maybe what a future state might look like, and integrating that into a Salesforce or a Microsoft Teams, and improve the productivity, but also their end customers' experience and how they communicate with your client. So we take a multifaceted approach, but we simplify it. We provide that end client with an executive summary. We shorten the interval that would have typically taken them weeks to evaluate a change like this themselves, and even as an MSP to evaluate and advise on these. And we shorten that time frame, and then being vendor agnostic, we're able to make recommendations based on the right fit, as opposed to old round peg, square hole, which you see a lot out there with desperate salespeople.
To that same question, so what do you say to the MSP that's like, look, I just work with Vonage, and they've done, I'm just making up a name, Vonage, and they've done a good job for me, and I have some agent type agreement with them where they kick me a little bit of revenue, and I kick them some business, and that's the arrangement I have. Why would I go to a team like Bandwidth Team?
Yeah, so certainly not everyone's going to select Vonage. They're most prudent business operators and owners are going to get at least a few different competitive bids. So if you've got an existing relationship, that's fine. That's one that you should put in front of them. But if they're going to go out and get a couple others on their own, you might as well at least have some involvement in that process, specifically since you're going to be supporting and at least the implementation and setting up the network to make sure it's optimized. So we still have the ability and do pay commissions to our MSP partners. We've got two different platforms, both an upfront and a residual plan that they can choose from, whichever one makes the most sense. So there's still a way to not only recognize the project revenue, but also on the back end to earn really passive income and mailbox money, as we call it, through that commission structure as well.
Okay, so that's still a possibility. So when you're working with an MSP, so let's say hey, they selected the carrier, and what is your involvement in, hey, there's a provisioning process and a deployment, installation, setup, whatever. So I'll take an example of, they've got new phones and they're going to get, physical phones that we need to deploy to their handset. How do you work with the MSP in that regard?
That's a great question, Aaron. So our process really begins after an agreement is made. We spend a significant amount of time in setting up weekly cadence calls and updates through the major milestones of that project. And one of the areas that we have a lot of expertise is holding the underlying providers accountable to doing what they say they're going to do, both pre-implementation and post-implementation.
You're saying they don't just do that automatically?
No, unfortunately, having been in the industry for almost 15 years, it's, you hear no a lot, and we jokingly say if you hear no, it's because you've asked one or two of the wrong questions. One is you've asked the wrong person the wrong question, or you've just asked the wrong question. So we typically just don't take that no as the answer, and we'll go and escalate that all the way up to the VP and C level of these organizations.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's great. So you've got good relationships with those vendors where you could do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's key, is having those backlines into those organizations when you're dealing with that frontline customer service rep who's just reading the script. It can be very frustrating and very challenging if you go out and try and do it on your own.
That makes sense. I'm going to throw another poll up here. If you want to continue the conversation with Robert and his team, and just go ahead and click in there. You should see that up on your screen in a second. And then additionally, I'm seeing a few things coming through the chat. If you got any questions for me or Eamon or Robert, we're here right now. We're going to take some Q&A and that kind of stuff. One that I see related to you, Robert, is how often should circuits and VoIP be reviewed?
Yeah, at a minimum of every 3 years. But as I mentioned earlier, specifically on the cost per megabyte, it's decreasing year over year. Fortunately, the demand is increasing as more apps are being put into the cloud by these clients. So otherwise, we probably wouldn't have a sustainable business, but we do. And that's because the demand is increasing at about the same rate the cost is decreasing. So at a minimum every 3 years, but really every couple years. The same is true about the cost per extension or user on a VoIP system. 5 years ago, you were looking at $30+ and now you're looking at 20. Depending on economies of scale, it can get down into the teens as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah, good question.
So we've already answered these. Yeah. So at a high level, what we're talking about is the entire process is using a tool like Cognition360 to be able to identify, these are my customers that don't have consistent project revenue. And we've kind of gone over the reasons why that's important, both from a monetary standpoint and then from a service standpoint. So you can get those support tickets down. They're on faster internet. You're going to get less, hey, my internet's slow, especially now, my VoIP is slow, whatever. And then once you've identified those, being able to engage and do things, take action on those customers and work with a team like the Bandwidth team to kind of initiate those conversations, do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to the vendors and negotiating which technology solutions are best. And then you're going to create that project again back in ConnectWise that you can then go manage and work with that customer. And then that process just is cyclical, right? So the important thing is a methodical way of going in and working these customers and kind of mining them for this information, which is what Cognition can do. But also you're kind of mining them, the information, you're using that because you want revenue and ultimately better margin on your service profitability. So we got one more question in the chat here. How does Cognition360 compare to BrightGauge? So I get that question a lot. So I really think that Cognition360 and BrightGauge were designed for different things. So I think BrightGauge is a great tool if you want to connect to a bunch of different data sources and have it all on one page. So one of the things that I see people do is they'll build a dashboard that says, hey, you've got 3 P1 tickets open now, or you've got this many projects open now. But where I think people make a mistake is it's not a reporting and it's not an analytics tool. So it's not designed to go deep into, okay, well, I've got 3 projects open now. How many projects do I normally have? Is that high? Is that low? Like, what does that really mean? So over time, what can tend to happen is if you're trying to make it a reporting tool, people stop using it because that's not what it was designed to do. It's a true dashboarding tool of putting everything together. The other thing is their approach is a little bit different. So again, they can connect to multiple data sources, but they don't build reports for you. They don't have, here's what you need to go look at. Here's a toolbox. Now go build what you want to build. So you can go do that, but you got to know what you want to build, and then you have to maintain what you want to build. So our approach is a little bit different. We come at it as, here's what all these other MSPs in common want to see. So we've got 150 plus reports broken up in different areas and really defined about, this is what you need to look at and that kind of stuff. So those KPIs are already defined. We already know that you want to look at team utilization. We already know how you want to look at it, how you want to compare people to each other. Those things are in common. So we not only provide that information, but then because we're a data warehouse, we can see that trending over time. So for example, I could go back in June of 2018 and tell you the profitability or the value of that customer, of a single customer for you in Cognition360. You can't do that in BrightGauge. For one, it's got a limit of 270 days, so you can't go past that anyway. But it's just not, it was never designed to be that way. It was designed at the time to be a quick, here's what's going on. It's not a point in time solution where you can go back and say, what did ConnectWise look like then? And how does that matter now? So those things come into play when you're trying to steer the ship of your business. Like things like what was the lifetime value of this customer, and how does that compare to my normal customers? Which of my agreements types am I most profitable on? Where is my technician's time going? what do I pay people to go fix? So if I'm paying people to fix 80% of my tickets are password reset tickets, and I can see that in a dollar amount of how much I'm paying all those, that's something that you can get in Cognition360, like out of the gate. Bright Gauge, you could try to build it. Good luck. I've never seen it happen before. But again, you're trying to use a tool for something it wasn't designed to do. So again, I've heard that question a lot. So it's kind of, I'll get off my soapbox now. But it's you got to figure out what do you want to do with that data? And so again, that kind of gets back to, we want you to take action on it, not just be a pretty thing on the screen. That's not why we were founded, and that's not why we exist today. With that being said, I think that was the last question. Adobe Creative Cloud tells me it needs to be updated. So thanks for that. Okay. Well, thank you, Robert. Thank you, Eamon, for coming on. Again, if you got questions, reach out to us. I'm going to throw up my screen right here with contact information for both of us. There's Robert with that beautiful smile.
Pre-beard.
I love it. I love it. That guy could not be happier. He could not be happier in that picture.
Someone's telling a joke in the background, I'm sure.
It must have been me.
That's true. It probably was.
All right. All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you for coming on, and we'll talk to everybody later.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, bye.